Hello everyone and welcome to episode 4 of the HTTP series. So first of all, remember there is a GitHub repo. You can start, you can look at it, you can clone it, you can do whatever you want with it. And that's actually the first thing we're going to do today is going to put a license on it so that you guys can start using it and using the source code for your own projects and whatever you want. So to do that, I'm going to create a license file. So software licensing is actually not that easy, but it's also not that complicated, right? So the very basic idea, let me check I'm recording. Oh, wonderful. The basic idea is that by default, nobody can do anything with your code. They can look at it, they can, on GitHub, they can fork it here with the fork button, but that's about all they can do. They can't sell it, they can't do all sorts of commercial stuff with it, they can't use it in their own research, stuff like that. So it becomes essentially, or can't use it in their own projects, because by default, according to the copyright law, or copyright laws in general, depending on where you are, it's a bit different, but in general, everything that you write is yours, right? And everything that you write is not only yours, but like nobody else has any right to do anything with it. And a lot of people might ignore that and use the code anyway. Like you're probably writing your own server based on this, and that's fair enough. It's not like I'm going to go sue anybody, but companies will refrain from using your code. So if you want your code to be used by companies and other people and researchers and stuff like that, you do want to put a license on it. Now, the question is, which license do you put on it, right? And this is kind of difficult. So there is this open source thing where you can sort of read open source.guide thing. We can read about all the licenses, which is interesting, but not, necessarily the best side, because it's basically TLDR, use MIT license, so everybody can use your code for everything. And it's not necessarily the spirit of open source, depending on who you ask. But basically there's a selection of licenses. There's more than it says here. And I think if you do legal TLDR or something it's called, TLDR legal, you can actually look up software licenses. So for example, I want to understand what the MIT license is, and it will let's see where it is. MIT. Let's just look for MIT. Expats. I mean, good question. Good question. Which one this is? Yeah, but basically this is the one that you'd use, and it tells you, what is allowed and what's not allowed and such stuff. So it's pretty useful and it's a good website, but it doesn't really help you, right? Because you don't really know what you want, most likely. So there's like a few things that every software developer will sort of run into. The first thing is commercial use, right? You'll notice that almost all open source licenses will allow commercial use. And this might seem weird to you because you might want your code to not make anybody any money except you, right? And that's fair enough. And in that case, the best move is to not put a license on it, right? Because without a license, nobody else can possibly make any money off of it, okay? Like legally anyways. And large companies will stay very far away from it and you're good. But it's not necessarily the right move if you want to sort of add something to the public good, to the good of the world, right? If you want to, because your code is, like, for example, this HTTP server code is not revolutionary, right? I'm not doing anything interesting beyond like writing an HTTP server, right? So really, I don't necessarily want this to be closed in a way that nobody can use it, because yes, I don't want other people to make money from it when I don't make money from it, but at the same time, if nobody uses it and nobody works with me on it and nothing, it's kind of useless, right? So that's why open source licenses exist. And the basic idea behind open source software is the freedom of the user, right? And you have to keep that in mind. So basically you're saying, I want my users to have the freedom to modify the software, to redistribute the software under certain license terms and such, in order to sort of keep the freedom of the user. For example, let's say I make an HTTP server, right? And people start using it, and then I make changes that people don't like, right? And I also make security updates. Now, you can't get the new version with the security updates without also getting the changes that you don't like that I made. if it's open source software, however, you can fork the software, change the things that you don't like, and redistribute it. It still says my copyright on it, but it now also says your copyright on it. And the license is the same, and there's no legal trouble, right? And if I like what you did, I can take your changes and I can put them back into my software, right? So it's all a very sort of democratic, open system. So now that I've yapped, and the yap has continued for a total of 5 minutes already, let's get into what license we're going to use here and how you can choose them. There's sort of two big camps, or three big camps. The first camp, and the sort of least favorable, is stuff like the unlicensed or the CC0 universal. These licenses are very broad, right? They say, oh, do whatever you want. There's no liability, no warranty from your side, so you're not, liable for if somebody's PC blows up when they use your software. But beyond that, there's absolutely no restrictions, right? And then the Creative Commons Zero and other similar or sort of public domain-ish licenses are also like that. So they'll basically say, I don't know, maybe there's like CCA, like the Creative Commons Attribution, for example, which says like you can do whatever you want as long as you say that I made this thing, right? So that's the first category, and the first category is basically let's call it like public domain. Essentially, it's not legally speaking public domain, but bear with me. The second type of license is the sort of permissive license, right? So that includes the MIT license, the Apache license. Those are the two big ones, and these basically say do whatever you want, but reproduce the same license, reproduce the same copyright notice. I'm not liable. There's no warranty. Or in terms of the Apache license, you also can't use it for trademark rights, mark rights. Thank you. And some other little bits and bobs. This is not a good summary, right? But basically, the MIT license is the sort of do whatever you want license. But compared to the public domain licenses, or I call them public domain, but they're not. This is actually a very good license. So if you use, for example, the unlicensed. The unlicensed basically says do whatever you want. I don't care. I'm releasing it into the public domain. The issue with that is that it's not really proven itself in court, right? There's not a lot of precedence for this. So people will stay away from it even if you have the unlicensed on it, because legal departments of companies and sort of other people who know their legal stuff a little bit will stay away from the unlicensed completely and say, I don't actually want to deal with this in case it's not quite waterproof, because for example in Germany you can't give up your copyright. So if this unlicensed, for example, said, oh, there is no copyright anymore, it doesn't say that, but if it said that, then it wouldn't be valid in Germany, for example. So there's a few little details like that. And so the MIT license has proved itself, and as you can see here, there's a lot of big things that use it, like Fast API, and what else do we know? A fuckload. I don't know. There's a lot, right? Most of the things that you'll see on GitHub will be MIT licensed, most likely. So that's the second camp, and that's the license you want to choose if you just want people to use your software. You just want people to use it, and you don't care if whatever they make with it, if they use it in commercial software, if they make people pay for it, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? And you also don't care that much about like what people the software that people embedded in and stuff like that. If someone puts this into their commercial product, you have no rights to that commercial product, right? Absolutely zero. So that's MIT license or Apache license, stuff like that. And then the third type of license are free and open source licenses. So these are real open source, sort of open source standardized licenses, like the GNU General Public License, the GPL licenses. So there's version 2, version 3, AGPL, LGPL, and so on. But essentially, these are what's called copyleft. And the way they work is that you basically say, anybody can use my software. Let's check out the AGPL. Anybody can use my software. Hold on, let's check the GPL 3. But of course, you have to reproduce the licensed copyright notice, just like with MIT. You have to state which changes you've made. So it must be clear what you've changed, right? So if I have this HTTP server and you use it and it's under GPL 3, you have to, if you change something, you have to sort of make it clear what you changed. Then the most important part is that you have to disclose your source code under AGPL as well, or under GPL. So if I make an HTTP library, for example, and you use it in your commercial product, your entire commercial product has to become GPL v3 open source licensed. It's like a virus, right? So I use it, and if you want to use my software, you have to also use it. And then everybody who uses your software has to also use it. And in that way, it sort of enforces software freedom. So anything that touches my HTTP library, if I were to write one, anything that touches my GPL3 or my GPL licensed code will have to also be GPL licensed. And so I'm forcing everyone to sort of be free and open source. And that's the hardcore open source way. Of course, people can't use this. I mean, they can use this commercially as long as their commercial product is, of course, also GPL licensed. So that's how that works. And GPL has also been sort of proven in various courts of law. So it's very, very strong. And there's also the Free Software Foundation, which we can visit that really quick, which will sometimes, or I've heard, will help you fight for your GPL rights. So those are the 3 types of licenses. And I just wanted to go over that because I feel like universities and other places don't really cover this properly. So like I'm covering it properly either. But this is important to know, right? So in my case, I really like general public licenses. The GPL licenses, I like them because I don't mind if people make money with my code. I really don't mind, right? That's good on them. But if they make improvements that make it better, I would like to know, right? And I would like to have those improvements. And that's the reason I think GPL is cool. Because if you take my code and you make improvements to it, then you have to also make those improvements and everything GPL licensed. And so I can go back and use them in my code, right? And so everybody sort of profits. And that's what I'm going to use for this. I'm going to use the Affero General Public License, which is just like the General Public License, but it has a network uses distribution clause, which basically means that like if you run this HTTP server, then that constitutes distribution of the software. It's illegal. It basically fixes a legal loophole for software that runs on the internet. That's basically what that is. And of course, if you follow along with my videos and you write the same code as I do, that's not, infringing on my rights. You wrote that code, that's on you. So you can put your own license on your own code that you wrote, and there's absolutely no problem with that. So we're going to create a license. Wonderful. And starting at this point, the code is now licensed with AGPL. And so now you can actually go and you can actually go use it, and you can use it commercially, and you can build your own software on top of it as long as you also make it AGPL3 licensed. And there's a few caveats with this, right? Like, meaning like AGPL3 and source, like, making the source available doesn't mean that you have to put it on GitHub. It just means that if your users ask for it, you have to give it to them. Right? That's all it means. Yeah, and that's all I wanted to do today. Just go over the licenses and pick a license. And the next time we're gonna get back into coding. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done that yet, because only like 4% of you are subscribed. So that would be nice. And have a good day.